Okay, so this is the first video of obviously many videos. First thing that you're gonna do, even though you're at the computer, you need to get out a piece of loose leaf notebook paper so that you can start taking notes. Not an option, I'll wait. And I know some of you still aren't doing it, so listen, go into your binder, get a piece of paper, don't upset me on the first day. So get that out. What I always want you to do, and today it's not up here because, listen, it's the Tuesday before you actually come back to school. So you're probably not gonna see this video for like a week. I'm a planner. I'm gonna have these videos made for months in advance. Probably not, that's a lie. Like 3 or 4 days in advance. But I want you to put the date up on your notes. Okay, so whatever that date is, put it up there. In Engage New York, everything's done by modules. Our first module will take us about 20 to 25 days. We've got 6 modules to get through this year, I think. Yeah, 6 modules to get through, and they're all about anywhere from 20 to 30 days. So go ahead and put Module 1, Lesson 1, and then we'll get started. So today's video is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to ask you a lot of questions that I want to make sure that you put down. I'm going to explain the process because first day, I don't want anybody to get lost on our first day. So today is more of a review than a new lesson. A lot of the terms that you're going to see, you've seen before. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about is the word ratio, okay? If you look in the packet that you've already gotten, they've defined some of these words. I'm not saying that I'm better than Engage New York, okay? I'm not going to say that. But I'm going to change up some of the definitions that are going to make a little bit more sense and be a little bit more meaningful. A ratio is a comparison of 2 numbers. Okay? Plain and simple, we're going to be comparing 2 numbers. You have seen this before. The most common way that we have seen it is what we've already done by writing fractions and simplifying them. Because you are going to be able to simplify a ratio. So we might have a ratio of 10 to 2, and that's how you would write that or read that. Now, is that 10 divided by 2 as well? Absolutely. A ratio is a fraction. Another way that we could write that is with a colon. 10 to 2. Notice the last number I say is the denominator. Denominator being the bottom part of the fraction. Last but not least, that hurt, is going to be the word 2. 10 to 2, okay? So a ratio has no units, has nothing with it. It's simply a fraction. I've spoken on this already, but I want to review real quick with what an equivalent fraction is. When we see the word equivalent, I always ask, okay, who thinks they know what equivalent is? And everybody raises their hand, they're like, equal. And I have to say, well, no. But yes, they are equal, okay? An equivalent fraction is going to be 2 fractions or 2 ratios that are equal. But what confuses a lot of people is though it's an equivalent fraction, it is 2 fractions that have the same value, okay? So they're going to have the same value, but look different. So an example of this is 10 over 2 is equal to the fraction of 5 over 1. And some of you are like, yeah, no kidding, Mr. H, because 10 divided by 2 is 5 over 1. Yeah, I know that. Now you know that. Equivalent fractions, okay? There is a multitude of equivalent fractions because I can multiply both of these by 5 and get 25 divided by 5. That's still an equivalent fraction. There's lots of different things that we can do this. It's almost the reverse of simplifying. So instead of dividing it out, we might multiply to it by the same constant. So an equivalent fraction. So now we're going to take ratio and we're going to bring it on down here. So the ratio is the comparison of 2 numbers. This is different than a rate. Okay? A rate still is a comparison. It is a ratio with two different units. And when we talk about units, this is what we're labeling things as. So I might say for this one, so here's my example, 10 shots to 2 makes. That is my rate. I can also write that as 10, the colon and the 2, but I like to keep it as a fraction. Hint, hint, hint. I like to keep it as a fraction. Okay? So good idea, keep it as a fraction. Right? Keep it as a fraction. So that's my rate. It's a ratio with 2 different units. Another way that I could say this is let's replace the ratio with the actual definition, a comparison of 2 numbers with 2 different units, right? Okay. Last but not least, I'm going to put a star next to it because it may or may not be important. Unit rate. The unit rate is the same thing as the rate except simplified, where the denominator will be 1. So a unit rate. Rate with a denominator of 1. So in this case, I've got my rate of 10 shots divided by 2 makes. Nice and easy. So to figure out my unit rate, the denominator always needs to be 1. So in order to do that, I'm going to divide both my numerator and denominator by that denominator. Divide by 2. So my unit rate is for every 5 shots I take, I make 1. Okay? That is a unit rate. So these are what you've actually written down. These are your terms. Every single day that you come in, for the most part, you will get an Engage New York packet that will have lesson 1, lesson 2, whichever lesson it happens to be. So what I'd like you to do is go to lesson 1 in the packet. Go to page, oh man, it's page 12 in mine. I don't know what page it is in yours. But go to example 1. And it says, how fast is our class? And you will see a table that is very similar to this. Okay? The only difference is, it says there's a ratio, they have rate, they have unit rate. Notice that I took out rate. Okay? I'm not so concerned with rate as I am with unit rate. So we've got 4 different trials. I want to figure out which trial was the fastest. In order to do this, and let's make sure that we can see. There we go. In order to do this, the first thing I'm going to do is make a ratio. Come back, ratio, we have no units. So my ratio of papers to time is 24 to 12. Nice and easy. 24 to 11. 24 to 10. 24 to 8. Basic. Okay? So now, for most of you, you're going to be able to move on and find the unit rate. Okay? Ratio has no units. Make sure that when you do the unit rate, you actually come up with your answers. Have the units with them. So now, I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Find the unit rate for each of these. This shouldn't take long. Remember, as you're working on this, use what you've already done. We know the denominator needs to be 1. So how are we going to do this? Most of you should have at least gotten through the first couple. If not, that's all right. So, unit rate. Well, my first thing is I've got 24 to 12. In order to get my denominator to be 1, I'm going to divide both by 12. That gives me 2. Now, it's a unit rate. So 2 what? 2 papers for every 1 second. Make sure you label in your unit rate. Ratio doesn't need a label. Unit rate absolutely does. Now, 24 over 11. Okay, so I'm going to write my 24 to 11. I'm dividing both by 11. Pick up your handy dandy calculator. Do 24 divided by 11, and we get 2 1800ths repetan. Okay, so it repeats forever and ever 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 and ever. Wonderful. Well, I want you to round to the nearest tenth. So tenth is this first number after the decimal. I take the hundredths place, and that's what I use to round the tenths place. 8 tells me to round up, so that gives me, in my numerator, 2 2/10 divided by 1. Well, 2 2/10 what? 2 2/10 of a paper, can't wait to get real whiteboards, divided by 1 second. So right now, we know that trial 1 is passing out papers at a faster clip than trial 2. Okay, double check my math here, you guys should still be working. So I'm going to divide both by 10, because that's my denominator. That gives me 2 4/10 divided by 1 papers and seconds. If you notice, I'm not saying 2.2. If you can speak like a mathematician, you pretty much will get math. I will never say 2.2, it's 2 2/10. It's 2 4/10. Use mathematical terminology. Last but not least, 24 divided by 8. I divide both by my denominator of 8. That leaves me 3 papers for every 1 second. As we look here, we see that our trials are going up in an ascending order. So the time that it's taking to pass out our papers is ascending. Trial 1, we can pass out the papers extremely fast in trial 1. Oh, nope, I lied. We're passing out more papers in trial 4 than in trial 1. It happens, I'm a liar, I'm sorry. So it is actually descending. No, it is, all right, it's ascending. So trial 4 is faster than trial 1. Okay, questions there on unit rate? If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. You might be able to catch in with the direct instruction lesson. Okay, so now we're going to move over. There's a lot going on here, I know. Go to exercise 1. So exercise 1's a word problem. For most of you little genii, if you're like me, how I was in middle school, I did not want to read the problem. I wanted to just start picking out the information and just going. Please, 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 please read the problem. So it says, which is the better buy? And I kind of ad-libbed here. You can read it on your paper. It doesn't say the exact thing. Value Mart is advertising a sale on pencils. A pack of 30 sells for $7.97, whereas a 12-pack sells for $4.77. Which is the better buy? How do you know? Notice that I boxed this in, okay? In order to find out what the better buy is, the whole reason why we use unit rate is to find out what one thing costs, what one thing has, whatever that happens to be. Who's going faster as they run, miles per hour, feet per second, cost per dollar, okay? So I'm trying to figure out how much one pencil costs based off of these numbers. So I'm going to break this down. I've got a 30-pack over here. I've got a 12-pack over here. First thing, I'm going to go back to my table that I just used. We had ratios and we had unit rate. So my first thing that I'm going to do is write my ratio. We're trying to find out how much one pencil costs. So think about that. If we're trying to figure out where one pencil costs, we need to figure out what the denominator is going to be. But if we're looking for a one pencil, then the pencils are going in the denominator. So now I got $7.97 over 30. So same thing over here. I got my 12 in the denominator because we're going to divide to get the one pencil. So that gives me $4.77. Okay? Unit rate. So same thing. I've got $7.97 divided by 30. In order to find the unit rate, we're dividing the denominator by 30. Would I love for you to use long division and do this? Yeah, there are going to be times that I'm going to ask you to use long division. Today is not one of those days. Get your handy dandy calculator, type in 797 divided by 30, and we're going to get a long decimal of 2,656 thousandths, and the 6 is repeating. So if I'm going to round this to the nearest, let's go, because it's money, remember 797 is money, we're going to round this to the nearest hundredth, so that rounds up to 27 cents. Well, 27 cents what? Per one pencil. Remember, unit rate, have your label. So same thing for the 12 pack. So now I got 477 divided by 12. Divide both by the denominator. That leaves me 477 divided by 12. So again, I'm rounding up. It gives me 3,975 ten thousandths. So I'm going to round to the nearest hundredth because it's money. That takes me to 40 cents per one pencil. So we haven't answered anything yet. All we know is the unit rates. So now let's answer the better question. So which is the better by? How do you know? When we are answering a word problem, don't just give me a word with it. Give me a phrase, give me a sentence. I want to see your writing skills while you're also in math class. Cross curriculum. Because listen, you're going to be writing for the rest of your lives. So, the better by is the 30 pack. Because it costs 13 cents less per pencil than the 12 pack. Okay? Notice how I wrote a full complete sentence? It explains everything. If I read the better buy is the 30 pack because it costs 13 cents less per pencil than the 12 pack, it gives you an idea of what's actually happening in the word problem without even having to read the word problem. Okay, so I'm going to steal this again. You're done with the video. Okay, hopefully you've entered everything in. You can watch it again if you want, but now you go to your extension and your homework. Okay, so one more time. We use unit rate to find out what one of something is. Miles per 1 gallon. That's important to me because I wanted to get a car that was going to have good gas mileage. So I gave up my truck, my V8 big old truck that was getting about 16 miles per gallon for something that's now getting about 28. Okay, so I wanted to know how much per 1 gallon I was getting. The cost per pencil. When you go to a grocery store trying to figure out, because my wife and I have something for Costco. They sell a bunch of stuff, a lot of big things. You know, I want to know what one thing is. So go to your problem set. You are doing number 1. Now listen, you are only finding the unit rate for number 1. So number 1, you're finding the unit rate. You're doing number 2. You're doing number 6. So you have to do numbers 1, just the unit rate. All of number 2, all of number 6. You must do number 7. So you're doing 1, 2, 6, and 7. And then you have an option. You are choosing one of 3, 4, and 5. Okay? So you're doing 1, 2, 6, and 7. You have to do those. Then you are giving the option, read through 3, 4, and 5. Choose one of them. Get those done. You'll have plenty of time in class to do that. Finish those up. Okay? Day 1's done, kiddos. Good job.